Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I am your host, Al Richards. And as I say every week, we got an incredible show for you guys today. You know, you guys have watched me interview over 100 and something people. And when I first started doing this show, after about 3 months, I'm like, man, how am I going to come up with the guests? Because it seems like all the stories are the same. And I was worried people wouldn't want to watch the show because the stories are the same. However, as I went on a few more shows, I started realizing that could be true. However, the journeys are completely different. Each individual goes through their recovery, what works for them, right? Some like the 12 steps program, some don't. Some some like like the Native American type of healing, some don't. There's so many different ways, and those who have watched our show a lot and listened to a lot of our guests, they all have their unique way of going through it. And some it's the higher power. It doesn't matter what it is. If it works for you, that's the only thing that matters. So today our guest, Amber Branson, who I met on TikTok, believe it or not. I finally got on TikTok a couple of months ago, and I'm already meeting amazing individuals. She had a video up, and literally, I got tears in my eyes when I watched this video, and I'm like, I got to reach out to this girl. She's probably think I'm going to stalk her, but I'm not, right? I just want to know if she's interested in coming on the show, and we actually scheduled a time where we could actually do a Zoom call, and we chatted in person, which I do with a lot of our guests before the show, just so we could feel each other out to make sure everything's good. So today we are going to talk about recovery is as unique and versatile as we all are, right? And I think it's a wonderful title. And Amber's got a lot of experience in this, and she's going to share some amazing stuff with us. So, Amber, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for asking me.
Oh, absolutely. Did you ever think that you'd have someone reach out to you on TikTok and say, hey, would you like to come on a podcast?
Honestly, I didn't even think that. So I was kind of shut down to the whole TikTok thing too,
Yeah.
they see it on the news, like they're shutting TikTok down. I was like, yeah, whatever. And then I don't know why, but something was just like, start a TikTok. Cause I don't know. I was just like, let's do this. And I did it. And like, I'd actually taken off a little bit. I mean, I'm not like a million followers by any means, but I
Yeah.
have people that love and support me, and I love it.
Well, you are sharing some really good messages on there. I wish I could have the time to do more live videos, and sometimes I do my best to share some clips of our shows, right? It's just my schedule is so busy doing like two jobs, and then I've got the podcast, and I'm planning events and public speaking stuff, and my schedule just gets so wrapped up, which is okay. I am definitely not complaining because I love doing this, and I love meeting amazing individuals like yourself, and I hope one day there's an opportunity where so many people that I've met that live out of state that we have an opportunity to actually meet in person. Because I'm a big hugger. I love hugging people. It's for me, it's man, it's just yeah, I just love that teddy bear feeling, right? So, looking at your bio, my gosh, you went through over 20 years of addiction. Is that correct?
I started young. I started really young. I mean, I didn't feel young because when you're like 12, you think you're grown. But like, I honestly, now that I'm 34, I look back, like I started smoking cigarettes young. I started doing, just like I was talking about in the TikTok that you're referring to. I started out huffing glue at a very young age. So, and which led, of course, to other things. So, but I have been doing something, some substance, some form of using since I was about 8.
Oh my gosh, holy cow.
Brief blurts of sobriety. And throughout that as well, I grew up in AA because my mom is in recovery as well. So, when I was about 15, she tried to like tell me I was an alcoholic and I needed to go to meetings. She would drag me there and I would see, all these people that were in their 30s and they were ancient. And like, I just couldn't, I just couldn't grasp. I was like, when I'm old and I'm 30, I'll get sober. So that's what I took away from it. But like, I always knew that it was there, but I just was like, I don't think I'm one of you, and I don't think I'm ready to, even if I was.
And I mean, why did you look at it that way? And I like to ask this question because I get so many different types of answers, right? Of why did you?
Mhm.
I mean, because again, when we're young, we're instructable, right? I mean, it's like, man, we can just do whatever we want. Nothing's ever going to happen to us. But I mean, did you kind of look at it that way? It's like I'm just going to do what I want, and who are you to tell me? Because I'm going to go out and have some fun, right?
Right. Well, I think for me, it was a missing piece, right? So there was like a missing variable. It's kind of like Narcan. I remember shooting heroin and thinking like, oh, I can't die. There's Narcan. I never stopped to think that, hey, maybe somebody won't be there to call 911 and get you Narcan. It was kind of like that too with like getting help early on. It was just like, I'll get clean and sober like my mom did when I'm old and I'm ready to settle down and life needs to slow down. But until then, I'm just having fun. I never stopped to think that what that fun would lead to, or that I might not make it there at the age of being old at 30.
Right.
So that just wasn't a thing for me. I don't know why I didn't see that. I guess I just had my mom thought she was setting an example of, this is what happens. I got myself in trouble, right? I'm fixing it, I'm making amends, and I'm coming out the other side clean. She did set that example, but what she didn't understand is that I was not old enough to really realize that was what the example was supposed to be. I just thought, oh, you can just go crazy and you can completely turn it around when you're 30. I
Right.
didn't know that you might not make it there. I didn't realize there are some things that, you can fix pretty much anything, but there's relationships that you may not get to mend because those people pass on. There's certain things that just aren't going to happen if you continue to do that. And things are always going to escalate. They're always going to progress. They're never just going to be like, we're just going to stay the same. Or, you can't, we have a cliche saying in AA, once a cucumber's turned into a pickle, you can't turn a pickle back into a cucumber, right? And
Right.
like, that's how I feel now. But like at the time, I was just like, whatever, like you said, like I'm young, I'm gonna live forever, I'm indestructible.
Well,
That's
and we don't realize, like you just said too, we don't realize where it's going to take us, right?
no.
Because just real quick for on my story, I did my first line of cocaine at age 17 after I graduated from high school. I started working construction and I left Salt Lake City and went to Colorado and I met some guys. We were just in a small farm town and we were like the celebrities because we're putting television cable in this small little hick town that had one traffic light. Seriously, had one traffic light. It was just all farmland. And I mean, they'd invite us into the bar at age 17 and they'd all buy us beers because they wanted cable at their house as soon as possible. And the first time I tried a line of cocaine, I was like in heaven. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is some amazing stuff. And I don't even realize why I even kind of started doing it. Not, well, I do. It's because there was some things I was suffering from that had happened to me as I was a child growing up that I didn't even realize it was doing something inside of me, right? However,
Mhm.
I did not realize what that one line of cocaine was gonna do to my life years down the road. I mean, it took till like in, the late 1990s into the early 2000s where I did it again and where my life was at the time, I was in love again for the second time. However, I fell in love with it every freaking weekend. I mean, every Friday and Saturday night, I worked my butt off all through the week, 13, 14 hours a day till Friday. It was 8 hours punching the clock on the phone, calling my guy up, going and picking up whatever I needed to pick up, go hit the liquor store, go home, do some lines, have a few drinks, and go do my yard work, and I did that the 3 years my wife and I was dating. I did cocaine the whole time and she didn't even know. That's how well I hit it. And I ended up ruining a career of 24 years because of it. I ended up
Mm.
getting drug tested one day, hadn't been drug tested in 15 years. And then a career of 24 years that I worked my ass off to get up into management and make really good money. I threw it away for a line of cocaine every Friday and Saturday night. So we don't realize where it's going to take our life, right? We just see the moment. We don't see
Mhm.
the future.
Yeah, and like you were saying, like in the physical form, yes, it is just a line of cocaine, and for me, it is just, a crack rock, and it is just that. But to me, it was, and I'm sure this is probably how it was for you. You let me know. It was a cure-all, it was a fix-all, it was the best elixir ever, and it was my best friend. It
Yep.
never down, it did its job. Drugs are designed to make you feel euphoric and different. Okay, if you're not happy where you're at, you're gonna go to drugs. And drugs do their job and they do their job well. They got me high, I forgot how I felt, and I was different. But the thing is, though, you don't get to live in La La Land forever. That's not, like Alice in Wonderland. I always think about her, when she goes in the little door and then she drinks the potion and she's big, and then she drinks the potion and then she's small, and she can't get right back size again. That's how I felt. And like, I just needed to realize that, like, that's not real life. Um, and I don't want what I do live to be in La La Land. I don't want the little life that I do get to be in La La Land. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and what you were saying about, it's you let your life go down the drain. Like, that's exactly how it was for me too. Like, you don't realize when you pick up that first one, that first time, that you don't think that. And that's kind of like what I wanted to talk about today, was like with the labeling people and boxing people up. That's another reason why I got caught up in this. When I pictured an alcoholic, I pictured that bum panhandling on the corner with the brown paper bag going to sleep under the bridge. I didn't picture a 16-year-old girl waking up to a still reserve every morning so she don't shake and she can go to work. I didn't picture that. So I never thought, that could never be me. Never. I'm too cute. I'm too young. I'm too, but that's not the reality. And that's why I want to get rid of these stereotypes, get rid of the labeling, quit boxing us up, and just be like, hey, she's a teacher. Did you know she also used to shoot meth? But like, you never
Yeah.
know what. And when you stereotype things, you're making it seem like this only one certain person does that. So that when you are young, like I said about when I walked into the AA meeting and everybody was old, that's not real. But to me, that's how it felt, and that's what I thought. That was me labeling them. So it was just like, well, I don't need to do this because I'm not old yet. That's why I think that it's important to really see somebody and identify people as they are and not as what they have or what they've been through.
And I agree, because when I was reading your bio, I'm like, oh my gosh, this girl is spot on with how we look at things here on the other side of addiction, right? And I'm just as guilty, Amber. I mean, seriously, I used to drive downtown and look at the unsheltered and the drug addicts and alcoholics, and get your effing crap together, and why don't you give back to society? And then here I fall into the recovery community, and I watched my wife go through 8 years, right, of alcoholism. Still, it took me a long time. I joke around, I guess I'm a slow learner. But, when I first started opening up about what was going on in my home life, I've done a lot of networking in the past 14 years. I've got my name out there a lot, and I've met a ton of amazing people. I started having people pulling me off to the side and going, "Can we talk in private?" Yeah, sure. And we go off to a corner, and they'd go, "Al, I don't know if you knew, but I used to be an addict." What? I've known you for 8 years. I had no clue. And it
Hmm.
got to where almost everywhere that I went, I was getting pulled off to the side. And it was either someone's child, or it was them, or it was their spouse. And I started also realizing there is such a stigma out there. And we've said on our show many times, addiction doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care what type of family you come from. It doesn't matter what color of skin. It doesn't matter if you're religious, non religious. none of all that shit is out the door, because it affects every single type of individual that's out there, and thousands of them. And the stigma of not, I was talking to a gentleman at a networking event today, and he was talking about that. He goes, the stigma that society looks at them as less than, they don't deserve to be here. And that's not true. And you were saying that, right? We all deserve to be here. We have gotten lost. We still have people who love us. We are still individuals.
Right.
And we have burned a lot of bridges. However, some of those bridges, not all of them, but a lot of them will be rebuilt. And
Facts.
we are just individuals who got lost. Why is it okay for someone to get lost and go to their doctor and get prescriptions? It's okay, right? Because a doctor gave them to me. However, what's so wrong with someone going to a dealer down the street that they're comfortable with and picking up a bag of coke or heroin or crack, whatever it may be? That's their doctor. However, shunned on, right? It's like, you don't deserve to be in society. It's crazy.
It is crazy. And you just brought back something for me that I haven't thought about in years. I was in a treatment center for women. It's like renowned in Ohio. Everybody knows about it in Ohio, which is where I'm at. It's called Amethyst, and there was a counselor there, and people would say stuff like they were like abusing their gabapentin, and they were like in the sober living, because you live there. It was like it could be up to a 5-year treatment center. And they were like, well, I need this Xanax, I have anxiety. And she was the meanest counselor there. She was like the meanest, but she said everything she said and it made sense. And she said it with love. She was just real blunt. And she was like, she said, does your body know the difference between a dope boy and the doctor? No, your body knows that it sent these chemicals to this part of your brain, and that's all it knows. Your body don't care about dope boys, street drugs, or doctor. It's all the same. And she would just go in on people like, and I just like, that's exactly what you just reminded me of when you said that. Oh yes. But yeah, I totally agree with that. I don't think there is a one size fits all recovery, because there's not a one size fits all addict or alcoholic, even me just saying addict or alcoholic, because I don't know why, but people that are alcoholic don't want to be seen as an addict most of the time. I'm not speaking in general. I'm just saying in my experience. And then also the people that are addicts are like, oh no, I was way more than an alcoholic. It's just kind of like that. But in the same aspect, the disease, the suffering, the trauma, all of that is pretty much the same in my experience, and then there's people like me that I would do anything you put in front of me, period. I did not discriminate against them. Now, if I'm buying, there might be a certain one that I'm going to buy and I won't buy other ones. But if it's in front of me and you're telling me it's mine, I'm going to do it. So, what do they call that? Polyamorous or drug user?
Something like that.
Yeah, that was me. But yeah, that I just think about like how labels, not only do they hurt people, but also I think the labeling, it leaves this mark. Like I said, like for me as a young impressionable lady, I was sitting here and I kept doubting and denying. It left me in denial for so long because I could not fathom that I might have an alcohol problem, because nobody told me about the side effects, right? Because the thing about Alcoholics Anonymous, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. It's my pathway to recovery, but it is anonymous.
Yeah.
It's not anything. And there's traditions and, there's steps, and they have their traditions to keep them safe. They don't want anybody coming in there and taking over. And I understand that. But in the same token, it is anonymous. It's not something they're blasting out on TV or commercials or, on Facebook or anything like that. And you don't know the signs of addiction or alcoholism. It's so huge now, but when I was younger and I first started my addiction, it wasn't like that. What you've seen on the streets that you accidentally got a glimpse of or you would see on TV, that was what I thought drug addiction and alcoholism look like. And they make it's kind of like, when they show people smoking pot on TV and they're seeing trails, and you and
Right.
I know, when you smoke pot, you do not see trails. They exaggerate and they make it look worse than it is. And so I never pictured that I could, 20 years later, be walking into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous and I would see my drug dealer, I would see my third grade teacher, I would see a nurse, I would see a lawyer. I didn't know that. I was like, where are all these bums with the brown bags? Where they at?
Yeah.
This didn't occur to me. So I really want to just impress upon people that everybody has a different life path, okay? And just because everybody has the same, disease, or, people want to argue whether it's a disease or a choice, and it's both, in my opinion. But people want to argue that. But what I'm saying is, you don't know who they were before this happened to them. So who they are when it happens to them and who they become afterward is always going to be different. Just it's kind of like saying, everybody that has diabetes is the same. They're all that, there's a lot of assumptions people make about that. People are
Right.
overeating, much sugar, whatever. And that's not true. Some people are born like that. Some people have low sugar. Some people, but there's always assumptions and labels and boxes, and that's what we do. And we do that, I think, to protect ourselves. Like if we know an alcoholic and an addict is that scary guy in the corner with the brown bag, ooh, stay away. But that's not the reality at all. At all. I'm not a scary guy with a brown bag, and I am definitely an addict and an alcoholic.
Well, and you nailed it, right? It is. It's that labeling. When my wife started her journey for the umpteenth time, in all honesty, of recovery, right? She'd get up at these meetings and say, "Hi, I'm Janan, and I'm an alcoholic."
Mhm.
And I remember, I don't know when it was, but on the way home, I'm like, "I wished you would not do that." And she's like, "Do what?" And I'm like, "Label yourself as an alcoholic." Because right now you're 35 days sober. You're not an
Mhm.
alcoholic, right?
Okay.
You're 35 days sober. And that's just how I'm seeing it, right? And it took a little time, and she got to where, I don't know, maybe it was 3 or 4 months. And then when she'd get up, she'd say, "Hi, my name's Janan, and I'm in long-term recovery." So she took that label off herself. Now I know in some, like, I think it's either AA, that's just the verbiage that they teach you, right? And it's okay. That's what's working for them, I guess, right? However, I
Right.
know people who have been in recovery that if they go to events like that, they'll say, "Hi, I'm so and so, and I'm an addict." But they'll go to other events that they'll go and say, because they'll respect where they're at, and they'll just say,
Right.
"Hi, I'm so and so, and I'm in long-term recovery." To put that label, to take that label off of them, because again, people don't they don't see, they don't have an opportunity, and they won't actually want to even probably see who that person was before and what they went through in life, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I've had guests, both men and women, sexually assaulted at very young ages. We had a gentleman on our show that was sexually assaulted by his uncle, and he went home and told his dad, and his dad beat the shit out of him,
Oh
called him
my
a liar. So where do you think that guy's life went? He was end up sexually abused for the next 9 years, right? Because why tell someone I just got my butt kicked for it? Now, you go see that guy on the street using and shooting heroin and drinking. Again, you see the brown bag guy, but you don't know what that kid's been through,
God.
right?
Mhm.
And we've had women on the show, same thing, at young ages, and by multiple family members. And my gosh, some beaten. And it's just, again, these are human beings, and stop looking at somebody as what you just see right there, because there is a whole story behind it that you don't even have a clue about. And that's one of our missions on the other side of addiction too, is to get rid of the stigma, to start
Yeah.
opening people's eyes. And I tell you what, if you see some of the people that come on the show, even like yourself, right? You see I mean, you're young and you're vibrant and you're beautiful, and you got all this energy. Who would ever thought that you had 20 years of addiction, right?
Oh yeah, people don't know. And yeah, and I honestly, like, I just interviewed a lady to babysit, and she works at a preschool, and she was just like, you can tell some of the parents are druggies. And I just kind of was like, oh, like, you know what I mean? Because I'm not going to spill my guts and just tell life, right? But I think she comes in, she sees me, she sees my home, she sees my children, she sees the way I interact. She just couldn't fathom it, right? But she doesn't know.
Uh-uh.
And that's the
Well,
thing. You don't know what somebody's going through. You don't know their pain.
look at my wife's a good example, right? We dated for 3 years before I decided to get married again. And the whole 3 years that we dated, I was snorting cocaine every Friday and Saturday night. She had no clue.
Right.
People had no idea. They came into our home and saw a beautiful home. They knew I worked my butt off. Well, that's not an addict, right?
Right. Yeah.
However, yeah, and my wife says she doesn't look at me like I was an addict because it was only 2 days a week thing, right? It was just the Friday and Saturday. However, in all reality, really now, I finally opened up this January, finally, instead of just telling my wife's story. And thanks to a friend of mine putting his finger in my face after I gave him permission to speak openly, and he gave it to me, right? You share your story, not your wife's. That's her story. And he was 100% right. And I have finally opened up and started sharing about my use and why I lost my job, and people had no clue. No flipping clue. So I mean, are we supposed to go outside and roll around in the dirt and mess up our hair and put pine needles in it and wear holy clothes and make sure they're all stained for people to go, oh, yeah, you're an addict? Because there are
Right.
a ton of people out there that are addicts that look just like you and I. They just
Well,
hold it differently, right?
even me using the metaphor of the brown paper bag guy, a lot of times some people, I've seen this, where some people, they're homeless and it has nothing to do with addiction.
Yeah.
It has to do with mental health circumstances, trauma. You know, um, I've seen it a lot with schizophrenia. So I used to be peer support, and I worked for a place, and I would just, like, I didn't work there very long because I didn't feel like I felt like it was hindering my addiction more than it was me helping. It was because I would go out to meet people at their homes, meet them where they're at, and that's not a safe place.
Yeah.
So it's not always a safe place. I've seen people using my drug of choice in the next room and then coming out trying to get into my vehicle. And I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I can smell it, I can taste it. I'm like, no. So, but yeah, anyways, like I was saying though, it's like you don't always know what somebody's going through. It's just like me. I make assumptions all the time about people that are rich, people that are celebrities, they're famous. And you think they're happy. You think they have it made, laying in the sun, at a beach somewhere, everything's great. But you don't know. There's things that come along with that lifestyle too that I will never understand. I will never know. Being followed, being harassed, being in the spotlight. I mean, there's other things too. But it's just like people as a whole, we don't understand, and we don't always know what somebody's thinking, going through, what is their mental state, what is their health. You just don't, what's their trauma, what was their childhood like. You don't know all those things.
Yeah.
So to just be sitting here, You know why? And I see this a lot with the MAT people. I see this a lot. When I say MAT, I mean medically assisted treatment, right? So like the Sublocade, the Suboxone, like I see this a lot where I see people like that get shunned. I see people like that open up about it and they're told, you're not sober, you're not in recovery, you're not clean. And to be told that when you are busting your butt, when you are working every day and night, praying, just white knuckling it sometimes, and to be told, you're not good enough. No, you still got that crutch, baby. That's not real. You're not recovering, you're not sober. Like I can't imagine somebody with schizophrenia. I can imagine somebody with diabetes or with cancer going in to somewhere that's supposed to be a safe place and somebody saying, you didn't check your sugar 3 times a day. You're not really, no, I don't feel sorry for you. You're not a diabetic. You always need a crutch. What's wrong with you? I seen you eat that Little Debbie. You know what I mean? That's just not cool with me. I'm not okay with that. Like and that's the thing, you know, you're being labeled and criticized in a place sometimes where it's supposed to be a safe haven, like where you finally meet your people and now they got something to say too. They got a label. It's not just the outside. It's sometimes it's the inside. It's the inside people like where you're supposed to feel safe and they're like, no, you do this. I don't like that. Or they, you know, people are people. They always got something to say. They always got a label to throw on you.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up, Amber, because you know, here's a quick little story of what happened to my wife. She was in the depth of her addiction, and she had just gotten out of recovery center, hadn't drank in probably a month and a half. And we're home one day and we go to bed and she's acting really funny. Now for me, I'm going, yeah, BS. You're trying to manipulate me, right? Because you've got issues and you need a bottle, and it's been a month and a half. I've seen you go through this. So here I am, the spouse, putting a label on my wife, right? I'm one of those outsiders putting a label on the woman that I love. Anyway, after some time went, she'd get up to go walk and she'd be jerking and then she'd fall. And I'm like, get the hell off knock this shit off, right? And she's
Mm-hmm.
like, babe, I'm telling you, there's something wrong with me. Oh, yeah, okay, right. It took almost 45 minutes of this before I finally started going, oh my hell, there's something wrong with you. So I grab her and we were like about 10 minutes away from an emergency center. So I take her to the emergency center. And she can't even walk. She's jerking, and I'm just literally holding on to her with everything I have because it's like she's just doing this stuff, you know. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what the hell's wrong with my wife? And we get her in, and one of the people that worked there, they saw her and they hurry and grab a wheelchair and they put her in a wheelchair. And even in the wheelchair, she's, you know, doing this, and then she'd talk a little bit, and then she'd kind of go like this again. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on with her. So we take her back in one of the rooms, and me and a couple of the other staff members, we help her get down on the bed. This lady doctor walks in, and they've got all my wife's information up. Now my wife had gone there a few times when she was drunk, right? And she was needing some help, and she went in there a few times wasted. This doctor looked at the chart and then looked at my wife and looked at me and said, how much has she had to drink tonight? I said, she hasn't drank anything. I said, as a matter of fact, she hasn't drank in a month and a half. And I know she hasn't drank because she was in recovery for 30 days and she's been with me, and I've pretty much not let her out of my sight. And I know she's not drinking. And she just kind of nodded her head and says, yeah, right. She's freaking wasted. And just as she turned to go out the door, my wife went in full seizure. Literally, his eyes in the back of her head, or went like this, and she's freaking just shaking all over the place. And I mean, I'm freaking, and I'm grabbing her, and the other staff are grabbing her so she's not falling off the bed. And that doctor just stopped and looked and then walked out the door. And I don't know how long her seizure went. And finally, she started settling down, and she had no clue what happened. I mean, she's looking at me like, okay, something happened, but I don't know what it was. And I've got tears in my eyes thinking, holy shit, what the hell's happening to my wife? Anyway, they're like, okay, we got to do a CT scan or something. So they start taking her out the door in the bed, and I walk past that doctor. And I'm usually pretty kind with people, but I
Mhm.
looked at her and I said, she's effing drunk, huh? Thanks a
Right.
lot. Because, right, you didn't even try. You didn't even try because of what you saw on her chart. And like you said, this is a place people go to get help. And you automatically stuck that damn label on her and
Yes.
didn't even look at anything else, right? You just assumed she was drunk. And that really pissed me off bad.
Right. Well, I think too, like, okay, so like we were discussing earlier, like where you talk about like people go to NA, they go to AA, they say alcoholic or addict, and it's
Yeah.
all about respect. And like I said, I do AA, and I know for what I've been told, like from my sponsor and things like that, they don't want you to forget that you are an alcoholic, you are an addict. It's not they it's kind of like this is what we're taught, right? This is like how it works, is don't ever forget that you are what you are because you don't want it to come back, kind of thing. This is like, it's like for your protection. It's kind of like like having diabetes. You can't just go on vacation and be like, oh, I don't have diabetes anymore. YOLO, eat a whole chocolate cake. And then when you start like having, a diabetic coma, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's to protect you, right?
Mhm.
So you wake up every day and you're like, don't forget, Amber, you can't drink today. That's kind of like what they do. But I guess I'm just talking more about like, I understand that people, they want to protect themselves. When you think, well, if I say the word crackhead right now, like what comes to your head?
Oh, I just pictured someone sitting on the freaking corner in one of the alleyways with a freaking pipe, and yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, right?
right. And like what comes to my mind too is, well, all I gotta do is say the word crackhead, and I'm thinking in my brain, show me a crackhead, I'll show you a liar, I'll show you a thief, I'll show you a bad person, I'll show you someone who's dirty. And I was all of those things, right? So like that's kind of like why my brain does that. But at the same time, though, we don't, I just wish this disease was treated more like a disease, and we didn't focus so much on the behavior. It's like when somebody has a brain tumor and they cuss you out and they forget where they're going, or they have Alzheimer's and they're wandering around the neighborhood. You got like the elderly and stuff. I've seen this happen. My neighbor, we had an elderly neighbor, and she would walk and get lost. Nobody goes like, you freaking idiot. Why
Yeah.
did you even walk out the door? Nobody would ever do that to that person. So why is it okay? We have ugly behaviors, but why is it okay to punish us and think that we're horrible people and condemn us for all of eternity based upon our ugly behaviors? Because most of the time, what those behaviors stem from is either you've been up all night, or you're not sleeping, or you're high, or you're trying to get high, right? Because
Yeah.
like you don't rip people off for nothing. You're ripping them off because you want some dough, or you're going nuts right now because you haven't slept in 7 days, or you're falling down right now and wrecking into people because you're drunk. You know what I mean? But if people would look past that and actually get to the root of it and stop judging and stop putting up these barriers like, oh, I don't want those people around me, I think we could actually help more people. And I think people would feel more connected. And I don't think people would feel so judged, and would feel supported and loved, and be more apt to admit that they do have a problem.
Yeah. I agree with you. The opposite of addiction is connection. We
Yes.
we say that quite a bit because really it is, right? When you have that connection and you know that people care, it means a lot. Quick before I go to a question for you. My wife's reading this book and I don't remember the name of it, and she got it at the treatment center that she works at.
Okay.
And she goes, "Babe, I got to read this to you really quick." And so there was a study. done on some animals, and I cannot remember the type of animal. Maybe you've read this book.
The Rat Park?
Well, no, this one wasn't a rat. This was some other kind of animal, and it said that they gave it some kind of leaf or something that would kind of like make them hallucinate or feel high, right? And this
Okay.
animal went to it and ate it, and it stopped, and it went through whatever it went through, and they watched it, and they would put it back in the cage. That animal never went back to it. Okay, never, just the one time, and it was done with it.
Okay.
They did studies to where they were, I guess, a couple, right? Or that there were other same animals in the same cage. They took the others away.
Uh-huh.
That animal went right to that plant and wouldn't stop eating it.
Yes.
So it goes to show it's just not humans. I mean, we're animals just as well, right? And some, my gosh, worse than animals. It's terrible to say, but it is. There's some people that are just don't have the love and kind for other people, other individuals. However, my wife
That's like
kept reading.
art.
What's that?
That they so they did this study and they called it Rat Park. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, with the heroin.
Well, I've seen it done with Coke.
Okay.
But yeah, it was the same thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. 'Cause
yeah,
rats are very social creatures. They're mammals. They're a lot like us, honestly. Like,
yeah,
they love to eat and mate and hang out with their friends. We all love that, right? So I mean, they're yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah.
Yeah.
They did it with cows. I think
Oh,
they did it with other type of animals and I mean, they tried it on all types of different animals, and all the animals reacted the same way, the exact same way.
okay.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so flippin' interesting. And my wife's like, that is crazy, isn't it? I'm like, yeah, it is. Because if you create some kind of trauma in an animal's life, they go for something that helps them forget or numb it too, just like we do, right? If
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, there's people who have been on the show who've lost their children. I can't imagine losing one of my daughters or even one of my grandkids. I can't imagine where my life would take me, right? Where my emotions would take me. I would want to forget. I would want to numb out. I mean,
Right.
even though God's given us all these emotions for a purpose, we're supposed to go through it. However, sometimes it just consumes us so much. And we talked about it at the first of the show. We all have our own little journey, right? Some can maybe battle it for a couple years or so, but figure out how to go on with their life as normal as possible, while others, they fall deeper and deeper and deeper into the hole.
Mhm.
And it may take something different to help them in their journey to get out of that hole.
Right. Yeah. Have you ever heard of Brene Brown?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Love
She's very, very well known in the recovery community, right? Because they show a lot of her stuff in recovery.
like TED Talks and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
She writes books too, but she talks about she had a TED Talk and it's one of my favorites and it's about vulnerability. But she talks about in the numbing process, sure, you numb out what you perceive to be negative. So like emotions are just emotions, it's kind of like a gauge on your dashboard in your car. Like, oh, we're running low on gas. Some people might say, oh, that sucks. And then some people might be like, oh, I'm so glad that I know that because I just passed a gas station and there won't be another one for 500 miles. It depends on your view, your perception, right? But it's just kind of, this is what's going on in your body and your mind right now. Focus, do what you need to do with it. They all are necessary. Anger, sadness, all of the emotions are necessary. But sometimes people are just like, I don't want to feel this one. I don't like this one. This one's horrible. This one's not for me. Let's just drink. But when you do that, like Brene Brown talks about, when you numb, you don't get to choose. You don't selectively numb. You don't be like, oh, anger and sadness, you get out of here. But no, you numb it all. It's all or nothing when it comes to numbing out, right?
Yeah.
So, and I don't think that people realize that. And yeah, it's just not.
I agree with that 100%. You know, I had a guest on the show, gosh, when we first started. She's out of Colorado. Beautiful, beautiful young lady, and she does coaching, right? So she's someone that helps individuals, right, better themselves. Okay, and she said her 6-year-old daughter taught her a very valuable lesson one day, and here she is, the coach.
Okay.
Storm was coming in. Her daughter is scared to death of thunder and lightning. Storm's coming in, thunder and lightning's happening, and her daughter's over there crying. And she looks at her daughter and says, "Stop your crying. Nothing's going to hurt you. It's just thunder and lightning." Her daughter looked at her and says, "Mommy, allow me to have my sad time." And
Mhm.
she was like, "Oh my gosh. I wasn't looking at it that way, right?" She has her emotions and she's dealing with it the way that she's dealing with it by crying, right? So she goes, the next time a storm came in, they were out on their front porch and you could see the thunder and lightning or hear the thunder and you could see the lightning in the distance. And she looked at her daughter and she could see her daughter was getting scared. This time she said, "Would you like to climb on mommy's lap and have your sad time?" And she got on her mom's lap and had her sad times. She allowed her to feel her emotions. Society has got us to believe, and maybe I'm not saying it in the right way as society. This is just how I see it. We are not allowed to be sad. We're not allowed to feel angry. We're not allowed to cry. We're not allowed to show any kinds of feelings because if we do, we're perceived as weak. Every single one of those that we go through, like my friend Nicholas T. Smith says, every one of those is a blessing. It's not a curse
Mhm.
because it helps us in our journey, right? And I would like you to elaborate on this. And I've said this on many and many of my shows, and I just love using it. I went to an AA meeting with my wife. This guy gets up and he gets his 10, 15-year chip. And the first thing he says is, "Every morning I wake up and I hit my knees and I thank God for making me an alcoholic."
Mhm.
I leaned over to my wife and I said, "That guy is effing nuts." What? I didn't understand, right? I understand now.
I was gonna say, yeah, I get
It
it.
was that journey, right? My mom's even said to me, I knew something weird had happened for you to lose your job and you wouldn't talk about it and you threw away a career." Well, guess what? This was my journey, right? Because if I wouldn't have lost my job, I could have lost my life by continue to doing what I was doing every weekend.
Mhm. Yes, you
This
just
is my journey. So, are you thankful for the
yes.
20
I
plus years, right? Even though you damaged so much in relationships, but look where you're at right now, right? Are you thankful you went through this?
well, yes, and this is why. So, like with the numbing out, like you talked about the little girl, and this gives me chills because this means a lot to me. Like when you said that she needed her sad time, she does need that sad time. And when we try to numb out, that's the number one emotion that we want to murder. We want to kill it,
Yeah.
is being sad. Because we identify it as depression, it's going to suck you up and take over your life, but that's not real. That's not always the case, right? But allowing her to feel that sad time brought her mom and her connected.
Yes.
That connection, that's that piece that I've always missed because I wasn't able to connect people because I couldn't empathize. I couldn't be sad. I couldn't have that. I had to numb it, numb it, numb it, numb it. You know what I mean? So when I got sober and I stopped numbing and I felt sad, I didn't have that bottle. I didn't have that pipe anymore. I had to lean on people. I had to connect. It was connect or die. And when I did that, ooh, all this opportunity and love and blessing and empathy and all those things that I've been numbing for so long just overwhelmed me. Like I'm so thankful because had I not realized I was one of us or an addict or an alcoholic, however you want to say it, I would not have ever got the blessing of connecting. I would not have ever had the blessing of feeling feelings, knowing what it's like to be scared and being brave, knowing what it's like to be happy and relishing and enjoying it, knowing what it's like to be sad and having somebody comfort me. I wouldn't know any of that. All I would know is robot, don't like this, numb it out, get rid of it, get rid of it. Something terrible happens, go to jail, numb it, something terrible happens, go to jail. You know, that was
Yeah.
not,
It's that hamster wheel, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
we just keep jumping back on that hamster wheel.
I love feeling my feelings. I love that. Yeah, hell yeah, I'm grateful to be one of us. I thank God every day too. Like, I definitely like, and my favorite one is being creative. I love it. I love doing TikToks. I love coming up with something that I think is going to make somebody smile, laugh, relate, cry, be happy, inspired. I love that. I love that. I have that.
Yeah. And just so our listeners understand it, and I hope you guys are understand what Amber and I are trying to say here, or wanting to say. I don't like using that word try, because you either do or you don't.
Trying to
I'm not a big Star Wars fan, but apparently that's in Star Wars. You know, feel your emotions, whatever your emotions may be. What we don't want to do is we don't want to get stuck in them, right? You stick your foot in the mud, be okay that your foot's in the mud, but do everything you can to get that foot out of the mud, even if you leave your shoe behind. Just don't stay there, because everyone knows what happens to stagnant water and mud, right? It stinks. And that's what ends up happening with our lives if we end up staying there. And take your time. My wife and I now we've got this thing, because we've been together 18 years this December, married. We just celebrated our 14th wedding anniversary. How we're still together, I guess it's God's will. That again, it's that journey we're supposed to go on together.
Right?
We have this thing to where now, if I'm upset or with something, I know I can say, you know what, babe, I really don't want to be bothered right now. Just leave me alone. Okay. Just give me my time. And it may take the next day, it may take the rest of that day, or maybe it might take me a couple days. And her thing is a lot of times, if it is the next day, she'll say, are you feeling better today than you did yesterday? And if I say no, she knows not to bother me, because before she would sit and just continue to poke me. What's wrong? What's wrong? Come on, smile. And I did the same with her, right? What the hell's going on? Come on, man. Life is great. Smile. Come on, come on. I wasn't allowing her to feel what she needed to feel and work herself through it, because it's okay that we work ourselves through it. Because I tell you what, that just put, as my buddy Curtis Marsh likes to say, that just put another gold nugget in my backpack to make me freaking stronger, because I
Yeah.
experienced it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think this too. Like I have a favorite aunt. She won't mind if I say it. Her name's Tonda. I love her so much. She moved to Florida on me.
Oh
But
no.
well, I understand. Her husband passed away of cancer. And it was a long, it was a, I'm sorry, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
It
Yep.
was a long, horrible process. And I didn't know this, but when somebody dies of cancer, they pretty much stop eating and they end up starving to death, pretty much. I didn't know that. I found out. It was horrible to watch. I don't wish that on anybody. But when that happened for her, oh, I just lost my train of thought.
Her moving away, and yeah, you said you understood because her husband ended up dying of cancer. Was it
Oh, why?
the emotions that she went through, or?
Yes, I don't know what. I completely just lost my train of thought. Somebody was, I apologize. Somebody was trying to call my phone and it
Oh, it's
completely.
okay. It's okay. We'll give you some time. It'll come back to you, right? Because that happens to me on the show too. I start going a different direction, and all of a sudden, someone shuts the door on me.
I know. I completely. That's doesn't happen to me a lot. I don't know why that happened.
So we were talking about like the feelings and the thoughts, right? Of allowing to give ourselves some time. I don't know, maybe it was the time that your aunt needed to grieve, or whatever she was going through with losing her husband due to
Oh,
cancer.
I did not mean to cut you off. I apologize.
You're good.
No, what I was gonna say is, she told me when after he passed away, she was just like, I didn't realize like how much I was grieving him already and how much time I wasted while he was still alive. I was preparing and myself and grieving for him to die. And I wish I would have spent that time with him. And she said, Amber, don't sweat the small stuff. I'm married now. I've been with my husband for 5 years. And you just get to that point where you're just like, we're not gonna break up. This ain't worth fighting over. Just leave me alone for a minute. You know what I mean? Like I just need my time, you know what I mean? And you just kind of realize like I think it's like as you age or like as you just start to realize what's important, what's really not important, like that's kind of how it was. But what I mean to say about with Tonda was she was going through a lot. She was grieving a lot. And while she was grieving a lot, people would be like, oh, don't cry. And she would call me all the time because I was the only one that let her cry. And I told her, I said, Tonda, they're shutting you down because you're making them uncomfortable. You showing that strong of an emotion in front of people that are used to and taught from day one to shut it down, they don't know what to do. I said, there's a reason why you want to talk to me because I don't do that to you. I will never shut you down. I will hold you. I will just listen. And she was like, I don't even know how to respond to that because people don't know how to do that.
Right. Yeah.
How
And
to
you're right. They definitely don't. They definitely don't. Um, we talk about at the start of the show, we were talking about the different journeys and or how we all have our own separate journeys. And w- you know, you've shared a little bit of your journey and what you've gone through and where life has taken you, and also saying, yes, I'm grateful that I went through what I went through. What was it that what was it that finally got you to drop the shovel? Just to say, you know what? I've been doing this so long, man. My life isn't going anywhere, and all I've done is mess shit up. I'm done, right? I'm done. Some of our guests, it's been a birth of a child. Some they just said, I thought I hit rock bottom and then realized there was another rock bottom and then there was another rock bottom. And it's like it was endless. And I decided I was done. What was it for you?
I wish I had this magnificent answer, but honestly, my last use wasn't even my worst. It wasn't. It was a typical addict day. I literally, um, I lived in a sober living and I had just paid my sober living rent and I put it in the cash box. It was a lock box. And I thought to myself, I was like, I really want to get high. And I talked myself into it. I kicked it down like Chuck Norris, like, hey up. I kicked the lockbox down, put the money out, and it was like $500. It was like $100 or like 125 a week or something. And I just went on a binge. And after everybody in that drug house, trap house had used me up, they kicked me out while I was overdosed. I had a broken ankle. I didn't know that. It was middle of February and I had nowhere to go and I was living in my car. And I just thought to myself, like, this just ain't it. This just ain't it. Like, what am I going to do? And I went to my mother's house because she lived not too far from where I was getting high. And I knew she wouldn't let me in because she had my kids. I knew my kids weren't allowed around me. So I slept in my car in Ohio in February. My sobriety date is February 14th, Valentine's Day.
Valentine's. Wow.
Yeah, it was the best Valentine's ever. It wasn't, right? So 2020 was just a bad year for everybody, but it was particularly bad for me. That's
Yeah.
when like hit and like everything was just whack. Like, but yeah, so it was like I said, it wasn't the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I've had some crazy, had my ribs broke, I've been shot at, I've had some crazy times, and this wasn't that crazy. It hurt just right. It wasn't overbearing to where I felt like I needed to get high again to cover it up. And it wasn't awesome to where I felt like I don't know, I hear that all the time in the rooms of AA, it hurt just right. And I can relate to that because it was just enough to where I know I needed help, but it wasn't so bad that I felt like I couldn't do it. And I called up this girl and she let me do my last little hit of dope and she was like, all right, we're getting you clean. She made me throw it away and it took me about 6 months to think about that because I had some dope left and I couldn't stop thinking about it for 6 months. I was like, I threw it away. I was like, I know something's wrong with me if I can't stop thinking about the fact that I threw away probably $10 worth of dope, like to save my life. Like I just couldn't stop thinking. But anyways, yeah, so that's what happened. And I got sober and I went to I did the first 4 months of my sobriety, I didn't even do meetings because of COVID. And then I went to a long-term treatment and next thing you know, I wrote a book. I have another kid. I have my other kids in my life. Like it's just, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to me. Like I went from, sleeping in a car in the middle of February. I don't know if it's super cold in Salt Lake, but let me tell you about Columbus.
Yeah.
In fact, it's cold.
I bet Columbus is worse. Yeah.
Oh, it's way worse. I can promise you that. And not to mention, I didn't have any gas in my car, so the car wouldn't even go around. Like it was completely freezing. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was just so what was yours?
Me losing my job.
Yeah.
No, I'm a, it's like I had someone tell me, and even my wife, I guess I was one of the rare breeds. I lost my job and I'm like, I just gave up 24 years of busting my ass, working hard to make something of myself, not realizing I wasn't really making anything of myself personally, right? I was using the job to do it. And I just
Yeah.
said, that's it. I'm done. I'm done. And it's kind of crazy too, because shortly after I lost my job, probably 2 days after I lost my job, one of my buddies called and said, hey, I'm looking for some stuff. Do you think you can hook me up?
Mm.
And the thought came across my mind just really brief. And I'm like, yeah, I could hook him up because he'll give me some. Yeah, I mean, because I'm thinking if I get some from my buddy, he's going to give me some, right, for doing him a favor.
For sure.
And it was just for a brief second, and then I'm like, you know what? No, I don't. And I just was honest. I said, look, I just lost my job because I just failed a UA, and I'm done. And
Mm.
and I'm not saying I'm not innocent because when my wife was going through the depths of her addiction, there was a few times that, oh my gosh, yeah, there were a few times where I thought if I kicked her out, I was going to have some peace, and I didn't have peace because I was afraid someone was going to grab her and rape her or do whatever because she was so freaking wasted. My wife's like 5'2", and at the time she was like 110 pounds, just tiny, and I'm thinking all these bad thoughts, and there was, again, I think I'm just one of those rare breeds to where I'd call a guy up and I'd get hooked up and I could do some and then have no desire to do it again. So I didn't fall back into that trap, luckily, you know,
Yes.
just luckily. And for my wife, it was 8 different recovery centers and in and out of detox. And, I promised this will be the last time. And, I heard it, and I was visited by God in jail, and it's never going to happen again. And I heard it so many times. And then the last time, just basically, I'm like, I'm done with this. I'm not going to do it because I had filed divorce 3 times on her and canceled it 3 times because something just kept drawing me back. Because I'd see this woman that I fell in love with, right? I'd see her start slowly kind of coming back, and then she'd go right back in it. And I used to use this all the time. I'm like, you just would get me right where I needed to go, and then you would kick me in the nads just like that. As soon as I'd start
Right.
feeling somewhat comfortable, man, you'd nail me again, right? And but this last time, here it is, gosh, it'll be 31 months on the 9th of July. And yeah, the last time that she used and I dropped her off at the LDS hospital for detox, I wouldn't even go in with her. I grabbed her suitcases, I threw them out on the lawn, and she couldn't even really walk. She was just barely crawling. And I'm like, good luck. And when I When I looked at her in the rearview mirror, I literally thought that was the last time I was going to see my wife alive. And then I was beating myself up for doing what I just did, right? I just threw her on the freaking streets right in front of the emergency center. And all night that night, I just waited for every time the phone called. I really thought it was the hospital saying, you need to get up here because she's gone. But something changed. I don't know, something changed. And we thought she had wet brain after she got out. She couldn't talk. She's 10 years younger than me. So I'm going to be 60 next month and she's turning 50 in August. And literally she was like 80 years old. She couldn't talk. I mean, every word that come out of her mouth was just gibberish. She couldn't walk. She shuffled her feet like an 85-year-old lady, you know. And I asked my uncle to do a blessing for her, and he did. And about a week later, all of a sudden, she started coming around, and 2 weeks went by. She was back to where she could talk and she could walk. And she goes, I feel like you've changed. And I says, no, I haven't changed. She goes, no, you've changed. And she goes, I feel like you're getting on life without me. And I says, I am. I'm done with this. I cannot continue to go down this rabbit hole with you, babe. I love you. It's just, I became addicted to her addiction, right? It was, I was going through what she was going through, just not putting the alcohol in me. And I just told her, I says, look, if you want to jump on this train with me, hun, jump on. Here's my hand. Come with me. But if this is the
Mhm.
road you want to go down, I'm done. I cannot continue to go down this road with you. And I wish you the best of luck. She's not touched a drop. She did have one little slip, just a little 1 day thing. She jumped right back on that frickin' horse, man, and she's not looked back since. So we even say today, like I asked you, are you grateful? We're both grateful. You know, I'm grateful that I did lose my job. It's hurt us financially for the last 14 years because I made really good money. We lost our
Mhm.
house a year later. We lived in basements of friends' house for the first couple years till we could get an apartment. And we've struggled. And of course she didn't work, right? So all the financial burden was on me. And but we're very, very grateful. And as like you, Amber, we get out there and we share our messages and we do shows like this with amazing individuals like yourself and so many other people. And if we can just save one person, if we can share a message that will touch one person to put them on the right path, everything all of us have gone through has been damn worth it.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
yeah, I just happen to be a lucky one, and not have to go through all this stuff. And I'm grateful for it. And yeah, I'm just grateful to be doing what I'm doing right now. It's just amazing.
It is. It truly is. It's foreign at first, but it's good. I can't, we call them sober problems. You know, my car won't start. I'm like, sober problems. I didn't even have a license or a car out there. Come on,
Right?
guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's like I've had a few people tell me because I'm like I said, I'm going to be 60 next month, and I do my best to stay in shape. I work out 5 days a week. I go
Right.
hike in our beautiful mountains, and that's my
Well,
church. My church is the mountains, and I do videos sometimes and go, welcome to my church. God and I just had a wonderful conversation, and but I tell people, I'm like, you know what? I'm very grateful that I'm 60 because I tell you what, I've had some good friends that haven't made it. And I get to still experience our grandkids. I still get to experience life, the good and the bad, and it's going to continue. And I'm also a firm believer that, I've been working on myself for 14 years. I still got a long ways to go. I am a firm believer there is no finish line when it comes to working on yourself. It's something that for me, I will continue to move forward at because I'm sure there's always something that I need to do better. at,
Oh,
and hoping that I can be the inspiration and the love for our grandkids, and their parents, my daughter and her husband are amazing, amazing parents. Uh, I I would have loved to have the skills that they have,
mm,
because I did things the old-fashioned way, the same way I was raised, right?
right.
And yeah, I'm just very blessed. I'm very blessed with things, and again, I get to do things like this. I get to meet amazing individuals like yourself, and build friendships from all over, and maybe that we never will meet in person, and it's okay. I still have someone that I know that I can say that I love and trust and has kindness and a huge heart, and I can still reach out and just say hello, how are you doing?
Right.
And it's coming from the heart, not looking for anything in return. It's just, hey, just to let you know someone cares, right?
Hmm. Definitely. You got a friend over here in Ohio.
Awesome. Well, you have one in Salt Lake City, that's for sure. So Amber, gosh, we have gone literally over an hour, which is hard to believe. This thing goes by quick.
It
Yeah.
does. This is fun though.
Good. I'm glad you've enjoyed it.
Definitely, I'm a talker anyway, especially things I'm passionate about. Yes, I
So,
love.
so am I. When we go to events, networking event, if I tell my wife we'll leave in 15 minutes, she knows it'll be 45 minutes later. Yes,
Oh,
I'm always socializing.
all right, yeah, definitely. I got a lot of making up to do. You
Yeah,
know.
right? Yep. So, what is it what is it that you wanted our listeners to gain from today's show?
Um, what I want everybody to gain, what I mean, I want them to take what resonates and leave the rest. But what I hope resonates with them is that there is no one size fits all. There's no one size fits all for anything. And I also want them to just, think about this disease and think about how you would treat somebody that had a fatal progressive disease. And I want you to just kind of change your perception a little bit and have more kindness, empathy, and no matter what that may be. And I'm not just speaking about addiction either. I just mean in general.
Right.
Like seriously, there's a lot of things that you don't know about people, like mental health, trauma, their childhood. You don't know. Be kind and just love on people, and just stop judging everybody.
I love it. I love it. Very well said. Okay, here's one more. What's your main message, or is that all kind of combined on what you just said?
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much. My message is just like I said, just I want us to stop labeling each other, get to know each other, connect more, stop putting up barriers and try to see the similarities.
I love it. Yeah, perfect. Now, I know that you have come up with like a gratitude journal, right?
Yes.
Now, is this something that people, if they would like one, is this something that someone can get from you? And if so, how can they find that?
Okay, so all you have to do to find it is look up Be Gratified by Amber Brinson. I'm on Amazon. It's a prompted journal for people in recovery.
Okay. So,
And go ahead.
no, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's prompted. There will be like an inspirational quote that'll kind of like align with the prompt, and then there will be a place to keep track of your clean time and any extra like thoughts or notes that you've had about the question.
Okay. I love it. When we get done and everything, if you would please email me with that information, right? I want to make
Okay.
sure I get it on the captions so when the show goes out, so people know where to go. And hopefully someone out there will say, "Oh my gosh, this is great," and they'll go to your site on Amazon and get something from you.
Yeah. Thank you. And if anybody
Absolutely.
wants to reach out to me or talk to me too, you can always find me on TikTok.
Yes, yes, yes.
Recovery Fire.
Recover. What was it again? Recovery to Spire?
Recovery is fire.
Recovery is fire. And it's kind of crazy when you said that because my good friend Mallory Roosh, who I was on the phone with as you were,
Okay.
as you came on, she wrote a book called Inspired to Recover.
Okay.
Find it on Amazon. I highly recommend it. She shares her story of her addiction and
In the
how
book.
one individual, one man, inspired her to change her life. It's
Aw.
amazing. You will need some tissues with this one because, yeah, she's the one I get the honor of getting sharing stage with, and we get up and someone mentioned my name to her in St. George. We didn't even know one another a year and a half ago. And we actually did a Zoom call and we ended up talking for 45 minutes, I think. And she drove all the way up from St. George to be a guest on my show. I think she was on the, I don't know, somewhere between maybe 10 or 15th episode. I don't remember.
Okay.
And we just became really good friends. I told her she's around the same age as my daughter, so I'm like, I'm just going to adopt you as one of my daughters. And we've just become really good friends. And her husband is awesome, and she's got two beautiful little girls who are just they are just a riot. They're just great. Yeah, so Inspired to Recover by
Yes. And
by
Mount Rouge.
Mallory Rouge. Yeah, so Ruesch.
Ruesch.
This is how she put it to me. I guess this is show worthy. She says, Al, if you know how to spell douche, just put an R in front of it.
My God. I mean, I forget.
Okay. Right? Yeah, you won't forget it, right?
I had a math teacher. I kept forgetting which way was, horizontal and vertical. And she said, Amber, whores lie on their back. And I will never forget
Yeah.
that. I never did. I was like, okay, so this is horizontal. It's,
Right.
6, right? Inspired change. What did you say it was?
Inspired to Recover.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
definitely. I definitely need a book to read anyways. I just read the Four Agreements.
oh, that's a
Love it.
good one. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
Another good one is from my good friend Todd Sylvester, who works for Wasatch Recovery. He actually worked with my wife, and I was a guest on his podcast. He's been a guest on mine. He has
Wow.
one that's called I Am Recovered, and he tells his story as well. Talks about how a little girl selling lemonade at a lemonade stand changed his life. It's an amazing story. Amazing story. Like you talked about, we all have our own journey, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I Am Recovered with by
Okay.
Todd Sylvester. And I think his book's only like $6 or $7 on Amazon. It's a pretty short read, but it's a great book.
Hey, short reads are sometimes some of the best. That
Yeah,
book
right?
is a short read. The Four Agreements is a short read, and it was amazing, life changing actually.
It is.
So
It is.
yeah, that changed a lot the way I view things. So
Well, Amber, thank you, my dear, so much for being willing to come on the show, be vulnerable, share a part of your life that some people, like you said, do want to forget. I've asked some people and they're like, Al, thank you, but I don't want to talk about it. Right. And that's okay. Right. That's their journey. I don't,
right.
I don't frown on it. It's like, that works for them. But, so thank you so much for coming on the show, being vulnerable and sharing your inspiration and your love. I mean, that's huge. And the number one thing is sharing your voice. And thank you for getting out there on social media and using your voice to make a change and help individuals, because it's going to take a plethora of us, right, to start seeing change. And I've seen, just in the little over 2 years that I've been in this, I'm already starting to see a little bit of a change, and it's really cool to see. I think people are finally starting to open their eyes and start looking at things a little differently. There's a long road ahead of us still. However, individuals like yourself and all the other amazing guests we've had on the show, we're all out there making a change in the world, and it'll be one person at a time, and that's okay.
Yes, that's how. Hey, it's one day at a time too.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much. And guys, thank you to all our listeners, all our sponsors, all our guest co-hosts when we do have them. And oh my gosh, just so many people. Guys, we couldn't do this show without our guests, without our listeners, without our sponsors, without everyone's support. Resilience Talk Network. Thank you guys for all your love and kindness. We're going to leave you with this as we do at the end of every show. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.